The following program is rated TV MAL. It contains strong language and is intended only for mature audiences.
TBS, America's #1 independent television network, presents the following sports exclusive.
You're listening to Basically a Sports Show.
Follow us on Twitter at Basically Sports.
Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes.
And check out every episode of the show at basicallysports.tumblr.com.
Now here's your hosts, Zach,
Greg, Mike.
And this is Andy, and you're listening to Basically a Sports Show.
You sure you want your one question to be that stupid?
Okay, so we tried to do this last week, but Andy couldn't stay for the whole thing. And then I made an executive decision after my laptop crashed. And didn't crash, it died. It's dead. Lost the whole show, re-downloaded it, and thought, the Ask Us Anything should be its own show without being split into two segments. So we're going to start over again with the Apocalypse edition of Ask Us Anything here on Basically a Sports Show. And boy, have we got an apocalypse going these days.
What else could happen in 2020 but your laptop dying on you?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I bought a new one, and instead of having it delivered, I said, I'll go up to Crocker Park, which is in Westlake, just west of Cleveland, to the Apple Store, and I'll pick it up. So I get there Saturday afternoon, right? I'm ready to bring home my brand new laptop. I'm all excited and everything. And the girl comes out and goes, we're closing the store. We've got a high-level security alert. They were closing the store because they were worried that the riots were going to find their way to the store. So there you go. So now I've got to wait a week to get it. But that's okay.
So
I'll use my big iMac and we'll be fine.
Are we starting from where we left off, or how are we doing this?
We're going to start
from the beginning.
We're going to start from the beginning. We'll start with SF Giants 58. I guess he's a longtime listener. I've never heard him actually refer to anything on the show, but he follows the thread and he follows us, and we know him and all. But SF Giants 58, one of the good posters on the boards, has some questions for us. So the first one is directed at me. I will take it. Greg, what would you have done if Brady had signed with the Browns? I would probably reacted like Mike did when he signed with the Bucs. It's like, well, I used to hate him and now I don't. But yeah, I would have been fine with it. I would have taken the second greatest quarterback of all time on the Browns, no problem. No issue with that whatsoever. I would have gladly taken him. And we would have unretired Vinny Testaverde's number 12 and given it to Tom Brady.
Is Vinny Testaverde's number really retired?
No.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. Or, I don't know.
But to answer your question, SF, I would be fine with it. Honestly, it sounds like a Browns thing to do, really. Bring him here and ruin the last 3 years of his career and kind of kill his whole legacy. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. But that's my answer. I would have been fine with it. It would have been cool. So up next, Mike, this one is for you. What's your take on the deification of the Ultimate Warrior following his death, especially when it comes to this? And it is a picture, I believe a tweet, of Dana Warrior standing in solidarity with the LGBTQ plus community, blah, blah, blah. Mike, that one's for you. Take it away.
The Ultimate Warrior was a piece of shit. He was a homophobic piece of shit. I think that WWE's 180 on him when he died is just the perfect piece of corporate cowardice from that piece of shit company. And Dana Warrior, on one hand, I'm, if you want to support LGBTQ plus, communities, if you want to help people who need help, I guess I'm happy that you're doing it. But for you to use, your husband's image, who, famously said queering don't make the world work, and you want to use his image to promote LGBTQ equality, it's just fuck you. That's what I think about.
All right. Okay.
Straight to the point.
Zach, what would you do to Bruce Boudreau if you ever met him?
I would have a nice conversation with Bruce. I haven't, at the time, I didn't care for losing 4 Game 7s in a row on home ice or anything like that. It wasn't exactly a fun time in my life. But, with history and time to heal, I have no hate against him. I loved the guy when he was here. He was a great personality. He was a very successful coach in the regular season, as it were. I just, would talk to him a little bit and maybe ask him what the deal was. And I wouldn't even ask him about the Game 7s necessarily. I'd say, why couldn't we just win one of those Game 6s? You win one of those Game 6s, you don't have to play Game 7.
So question: how do you envision meeting Bruce? Is this?
At a Haagen-Dazs.
Oh, okay, a Haagen-Dazs. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I was personally picturing IHOP.
Well, no, in DC, people would catch him out and about. His favorite ice cream, I guess, was Haagen-Dazs. He was the coach of the Capitals. Somebody was just at the Haagen-Dazs in the mall and was like, "Hey, Bruce Boudreau," and he's like, "Yeah, I'm eating ice cream."
Cool. All right. For all of you guys, what's the one guy who played for one of your teams that you absolutely find deplorable?
Mike Babcock didn't play for him, but after he was a coach for the Maple Leafs, and after kind of hearing what he did, it's certainly unlikable. And then other than that,
can you rank the four of us and tell us which one does their job the best? and the worst. So
and the worst, yeah. So and then this is just broadcast to everyone. So Mike Babcock turned out to be a real piece of shit. And then other than that, it's the one that pops into my head. Eric Lindros again. He when he came to the Maple Leafs, he made a big show about wanting to play for the Maple Leafs because he is from Southern Ontario, so he made a big show about wanting to play for the closest thing he had to a hometown team growing up. And then he got to the Maple Leafs, and he was actually pretty good. He picked up the slack on that team when Matt Sundin went down with an injury that year. And then, right when he's in the middle of a pretty good run, he, hurts his wrist, which the doctor says, you're fine. And then he refuses to play the rest of the season because his mother told him he didn't have to. So fuck him. And then on top of that, the only other one that comes to mind is Roger Clemens. I was too young to have any real concrete memories of the World Series Blue Jay teams 92-93. And so Roger Clemens playing for the Blue Jays was he was the star of the Blue Jays when I first sort of began to be cognizant of the sports world. And I thought he was just the man for a while there, and then it turns out no, he's a lying, cheating piece of shit. So those are my three.
Andy,
from an action standpoint, definitely Aroldis Chapman on the 2016 championship Cubs. This guy is this kind of a unsavory, abusive. And just an oily, unpleasant character that I would not. I wasn't really happy that he was such a vital cog in that championship team. The other two are more of a I don't like seeing these guys in this uniform type thing where John Lackey and Jim Edmonds both I fucking reviled them when they were on the Cardinals. Jim Edmonds especially. Fuck Jim Edmonds. And fuck John Lackey. I hated both of those assholes when they were on the Cardinals, and they both had a stint with the Cubs, and it was just a disgusting feeling to root for them a little bit. It's yay, you were a vital part of us. Well, Lackey was anyway, of helping us win a World Series. But God, I just hate your face. I just hate everything about your face. But those are my three: John Lackey, Jim Edmonds, and what's his face? Pitcher guy.
I'm going to go the coach route like Mike did. Hugh Jackson. If there was a bus nearby, Hugh Jackson would throw you under it. The guy went 1-31 over 2 seasons, had a real arrogant attitude about doing it, and drove me nuts for however many games he coached.
And then claimed after he was fired that if they had given him more time, he could have turned it around.
Yeah.
You went 0-16.
Right. Well, he probably could have, because all you had to do was win 3 games, and that's a turnaround. But yeah, Hugh Jackson's the only one that comes to mind for me with the Browns. There's a couple guys to the Indians that I've thought about this. I didn't much care for this guy, Eric Plunk, that was a reliever for a while. I didn't hate him or anything, but it's just oh, great, this guy's coming into the game. I get to watch balls fly over the fence now. And, Eric Lindros, and he was with the Rangers when I was at the Rangers fan for the same reasons Mike didn't like him. Not the same exact reasons, obviously, but I didn't like him when he came to the Rangers. So that's about it for me, really. Hugh Jackson, though, definitely the leader in the clubhouse with that one. No question about it. Who wants to take the next two here?
Zach?
Habs fan 1 from the boys.
Zach never got a chance to answer the spy.
The hated.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Well, go ahead. Give us your players, Zach. I forgot. I thought you'd already done it.
No. I mean, we've all already done
Speak up,
this,
dude.
You were already moving on.
Well, we can see who does his job the worst out of that ranking Mike was going to do.
Well,
that would be me.
No, I was gonna rank myself last, so then I can't be.
Am I missing an inside joke there? Did somebody ask us that once or something, or what?
No, it's what Mike Babcock did
to Mitch Marner.
Oh, okay.
Which I don't know how you do that to Mitch Marner. The guy looks like he's 12. How do you pick on him?
All right.
My guy, I mean, like I mentioned the first time, I hated that the Ducks had to sign Todd Bertuzzi the year after they won the Stanley Cup. Just, piece of garbage that I didn't want to see on our team, and there he was. But the guy that sticks out for me for the Ducks is Jeff Friesen, because he's an asshole. When the Ducks foolishly traded away Teemu Selanne in 2001. When they traded him to San Jose, the two guys that came back were a goaltender, Steve Shields, who was mediocre at best, and Jeff Friesen, who is a piece of garbage. Hated playing here, said he hated playing here, and got out in 2003 and went to go sign with, or 2002, I guess, and signed with the New Jersey Devils. And, of course, the Mighty Ducks end up playing the New Jersey Devils in that Stanley Cup final. He then ends up scoring the game-winning goal in Game 7. It was a 3-0 shutout, so it's not like it was particularly like a backstabbing thing. But, once I figured that out, even as a 13-year-old, I'm like, oh, that son of a bitch, that guy. And now he lives in the area and tries to embrace himself as one of the members of the Ducks alumni team. He shows up for events. He wears the alumni jersey. He skates in these pro-am things they do. And it's you piece of garbage. You hated being here. And fucking asshole Jeff Friesen. And it's funny. I hadn't thought about him the first time that we did this, but John Lackey is probably my Angel guy. I mentioned Josh Hamilton, I mentioned Gary Matthews Jr., but John Lackey, he won the World Series as a rookie, won Game 7 for the Angels. We'll never be able to forget him for that. But just as time went on, he was the number one guy forever, but his colors really started to show in his later years with the Angels, and then that went on to when he was with the Cubs and the Red Sox, where he divorced his pregnant or his wife who was battling breast cancer. What are you doing? You
that's cold, man.
Yeah, so
that is ice cold.
Yeah, I when John Lackey burst onto the scene in 2002. Yeah, love John Lackey, and in 2020, yeah, fuck John Lackey.
I was surprised to learn that Jim Edmonds played for the Cubs. I did not remember that.
Yeah, a brief stint.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
he had
good defensive player, but kind of a tool.
He made a couple really nice catches on defense, but again, it's what a play! I still hate you. God, I hate your face. It's a reflex. Are we all done with hated players?
Yeah.
Yes. Zach, you got the next question from Habs fan 1. There's 2 questions actually.
Well, why are you asking Zach Habs fan 1? They're both the first one's a wrestling one. Zach doesn't watch wrestling.
No, I wanted to ask the question, so I didn't have to ask them. I'm not kind of giving them, so I'm not sitting here asking all the questions.
Oh, well, I don't have them in front of me.
Oh, does anybody have them in front of them besides me? Okay, Andy, take it away, Andy.
Question 1, for anyone who cares to opine, is Vince McMahon holding down talents on purpose so that they don't get more over than they could? Mike?
Well, that's you and Mike, yeah.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think on one hand, it's just Vince McMahon is an out-of-touch old man who doesn't really understand what modern wrestling audiences want. And so it's less him actively holding people back and more him just not pushing the right people. I'd say that aside from that, if there is any actual holding back, I think it's because we've seen this in the WWE since Lesnar left the first time, which is to say that, The Rock and Austin left at the end of the 90s and the early 2000s. And they strapped the Rocket to Brock Lesnar and basically pushed him to the moon. And at like the height of his popularity, he was like, I don't want to wrestle anymore. I'm just going to leave. And like since then, the WWE has kind of been gun shy about pushing people. I think it's a mentality that they have where it's like, we're never going to let anyone be bigger than the brand again. And so now it's not even about like who sells house show tickets. It's or who boosts TV ratings. It's like WWE, the brand WWE is the attraction, and everyone else are just kind of interchangeable cogs. And I think that is at least in part by design. So I think if anyone's being held down, it's to facilitate that nobody kind of gets bigger than the brand itself. I don't know, Andy, what do you think?
I mean, I would have virtually just said almost the same thing you did. I mean, Vince McMahon is just an old dude who needs to not be running a large company, and he just kind of an old crazy bastard, and he needs to stop being on this mortal plane because he's running his company to the ground, and you know, the problem will take care of itself.
I mean, it's one of the things where it shouldn't have to be that way, because it's like, Vince, just fucking retire and let other people do it, but you know he'll never let that happen. So
I will say this, that with Brock Lesnar or Stone Cold or The Rock, or going even back to like Bret Hart or excuse me, Shawn Michaels, you know, the one guy that never left is still the baddest motherfucker of all time, and that would be The Undertaker. I'm just saying. Really good documentary, I think, on WWE Network. I've been trying to start watching it. I actually signed up for WWE just to watch the Undertaker's last ride. Yeah, very very good show. He's a very interesting, well traveled, weird dude. Like most wrestlers, just a strange, carny kind of person with a odd and difficult and interesting life. I don't know why that particular gimmick just caught on with me the way it did. But
the thing about it is that it's such a dumb gimmick from a period of like dumb gimmicks. The thing is, like, the guy they got to play the Undertaker, Mark Calloway, like, they're so lucky it turned out that he was actually really talented as a pro wrestler, because if they had given it to like, I don't know, Giant Gonzalez or some shit, that would have died a quick death. Yeah, I mean, it was this dumb gimmick, and especially as things progressed, and you're going, okay, they're not really doing these, you know, like Undertaker style gimmicks anymore. But he really sold it well, I thought. Like it just fit him so perfectly. Yeah, and he's been a very versatile. If you almost have to look at it like the career of a character on a TV show, not, you know, think wrestling aside, as somebody whose character has transformed and been through many different iterations and flavors, from, you know, the dead, literal dead guy inside of a casket coming back to life and floating through the top of the arena, or climbing out of dirt. For some reason, my favorite one is like late 90s Satan Taker. Yeah, he starts wearing like the fucking mascara and like the 5-foot pointy collars.
Yeah, satanic ministry taker to the virtually gimmickless American badass thing. Like, there's not a lot of people in the world of just TV and entertainment that can take something and make it and just stretch it out so successfully as he did.
And then he went back to the dead man thing. Yeah. And then as the dead man, he just decided, you know what, I'm also going to be an MMA fighter. And it all works. Yeah. Yeah, it all works.
It's just, I don't know. It stuck with me, and I'm like, I love this guy. I love the gimmick. I know it's silly, but I just enjoy the hell out of it. I mean, I will still mark out when his entry starts, like watching a YouTube video. It's like,
I remember back when I was in high school, I was watching wrestling, and, you know, my sister thinks I'm the biggest fucking idiot for watching this shit. Maybe she's right, but I remember I was watching an episode of SmackDown, and she happened to be in there. I'm like, no, you got to watch this. It's the Undertaker's entrance, and she's watching him do this entrance, and she's like, this is so stupid. Like, why is he? It's like, why is he just like walking to the? Why is he like rolling his eyes back and said, "This is stupid. Why are you watching this?" I'm like, it's awesome. Are you not seeing what I'm seeing?
Oh man. Okay. Anyway, but all right. Question 2, Andy, take it.
I'm not sure who. I'm certainly not qualified to answer this, so I'll leave it to you guys. Is Carey Price the greatest Montreal Canadiens goalie in Habs history?
False.
He is not. No.
Statistically, he might be, but like
Ken Dryden and Patrick Waugh would be my two choices.
Patrick Waugh, a couple cups.
Yeah.
Jacques Plante, couple cups.
Jacques Plante. Again, George Vezina, the Montreal Canadiens goalie, who they named the freaking goaltender award after. Like, I mean, when you get back to like people like Plante and Vezina, you're talking like the eras are so different you can't even really compare. But I'd say that, just in terms of Montreal greats, in terms of like goalies, if I listed George Vezina, Jacques Plante, Ken Dryden, Patrick Waugh, and then tacked Carey Price in at the end, one would look out of place among that list, and we all know which one that would be. So
Very out of place.
Carey Price is not the greatest Montreal Canadiens goalie ever. Given his stat line, maybe if he managed to win a cup, you could maybe wiggle him into like the top 3, maybe. But he didn't, and he probably never will. If the Canadiens ever win another Stanley Cup, it will not be with Carey Price in net. His window's gone, so no.
I would say that, and again, I'm hardly the hockey expert of the four of us here, but if you look at it like for the era, I'd almost have to say that, Ken Dryden, hockey was a little different when he was playing. He was a stand-up goalie too, wasn't he? Like,
everyone was back then.
Yeah, so I would probably, if I just pick one, and I don't know much about Plante or Vezina, but I'd probably go with Waugh. I think would be my choice, just because he played in a, maybe not. I mean, it was you got to talk like less teams, higher talent level with Dryden, and then going back with the other guys. So I don't know. I would say that you got those four guys have to be in the conversation, and Carey Price does not. That's the way I would look at it.
Yeah, and again, hockey's a team sport. You can't all come down to cups, but when you're a team like the Montreal Canadiens and you have the most, and you want to label somebody as the best of anything in Montreal Canadiens history,
they better have a few of those cups.
at least one. At least one. Probably two, but at least one.
Yeah,
and I don't know. It's weird. I actually had this discussion with my dad years ago, because my dad, being from Montreal, is a Habs fan, and my dad, also being a football fan, would he'd ask me these questions as if I knew the answer. But he'd be like, "Why do the Cowboys keep going with Tony Romo? It's not working." And I was like, Tony Romo and Carey Price are like the same athlete. They're the same person. Like the Dallas Cowboys are a legacy team that sort of is famous for good quarterbacks, right? You had Roger Staubach, and then you went to Troy Aikman. These all-time greats who defined the Dallas Cowboys, and so. The Cowboys, after, Aikman retires, they have trouble finding that next great quarterback. And then here comes Tony Romo, who's decent. He's not great, but he's the best they're going to get. And so they kind of cling to him out of desperation, hoping that someday he's going to be the next great Cowboys QB. And Carey Price is that for the Montreal Canadiens. It's like, I could list the names: George Vezina, then Jacques Plante, then Ken Dryden, and then Patrick Waugh. Like, there's this legacy of great Montreal Canadiens goaltenders, and that stretches back to almost the team's founding. And then, they have a falling out with Waugh, and they kind of have a revolving door of goalies from that point onward. They can't really figure out, who it's going to be. And then Carey Price comes along, who, not a bad goalie, a pretty decent goalie. They're not going to get anyone better, but they desperately want him to be that next great Canadiens goaltender. So like the Cowboys clung to Tony Romo, the Canadiens clung to Carey Price. And like Tony Romo, Carey Price puts up great stats, but never put it together. So
just to drive a knife into Mike before we move on, Carey Price to the Canadiens is Matt Sundin to the Maple Leafs.
I don't think Jose Theodore is getting enough credit for the Canadiens either.
Jose Theodore. He won an MVP award. Is Carey Price one of those?
I was just kidding, but okay.
Jose Theodore also won a Vezina, actually, over Patrick Waugh.
Well, there you go.
It's actually great. If you go back and watch that NHL awards show, it's hilarious because it was like one of Waugh's final seasons, and Theodore was like the hot new goalie for the Canadiens. And I forget who else was in the final consideration, but like it goes to Theodore, and they cut to Waugh in the awards ceremony like audience, and he is looking pissed as hell. Like he is not happy. But I mean, the thing about honestly, Carey Price and Matt Sundin. I mean, Matt Sundin is sort of the same thing for the Maple Leafs, right? Where it's like, probably one of the better players the Leafs have ever had in their history, but he never fucking won anything. So what does it matter? And I'd say I prefer Wendell Clark to Matt Sundin, but Wendell Clark didn't win shit either. So who the fuck cares?
Wendell Clark, though, come on.
It's all sadness.
Dougie Gilmore.
Dougie Gilmore. Yeah, he didn't do anything. Well, maybe Dougie could have done it if they would have fucking called that high stick on Gretzky.
There's more Maple Leafs that we can point out about this than Canadiens, so should probably just.
I'm about Ty Domi.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay. So, moving on. Okay, I'll take it. I'll take one. This one's for Andy.
Sure.
From Burgundy. He asks, "Do you have a favorite type of MX keyboard switch, and what's your opinion on the Romer G and Razor switches?"
Favorite type of keyboard switch is MX White, which I have on this keyboard that I'm using. They're also called Milks, which is weird, but they are very satisfying, very nice. You can't really hear them. They have a very tactile feedback on them, which I enjoy, but they're not overly loud. I like blues, greens, browns. Not a fan of reds, black switches. Anything that's like really mushy, I don't really like. I looked at some of the footage. I've never typed on a Romer G or a Razor. I looked at some YouTube stuff trying to get an idea of what they were like, and I was not inspired. So yeah, thumbs down to those. Honestly, Cherry is a very long-term maker of quality switches. I'm glad that everyone's trying to like get on the Switch wagon and make their own cool shit. But honestly, you can't do better than Cherry switches. So just get your reds, browns, blues, greens, whites.
Alrighty.
Be good. That's all.
Alrighty, and we got two questions for everyone. First one: do you think that the attempts at spring football are done for good for the depth of the XFL 2.0? And
probably not.
No, I mean they keep coming back, right? Like,
I
think the XFL probably would have survived had it not been for the apocalypse. It won't be next year, but 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road, somebody's going to think they can do it again, and we'll have again. I don't think it's done yet. I think we will see other groups try to put a viable league together, and maybe one of them will succeed.
Andy?
Yeah, it's not gone. I mean, so long as football is such a dominant ratings and money machine, it'll never be gone. But I'd like to think the XFL will get another shot. The second iteration will get another shot someday. But it's just, it's a very volatile thing to try and make work, and very few places get the formula right. So, yeah, it's never a closed door. Unless football, for whatever reason, just dies, which it won't. There'll be another shot for sure.
I'm going to actually go the opposite direction. I think that there might be one in, let's say, 10 or 20 years, but I think it might be done for the foreseeable future just because, the XFL probably could have made it had the coronavirus not happened, but it did. And as a result, we had 2 spring football leagues that managed to get on to, top flight networks in 2 years, and they both died. And I don't know. I just see that any attempt to do this again so soon is going to result with potential investors and TV partners kind of going, neither the AAF or the XFL made it through their first season. So
rest in peace, AAF.
R.I.P. Apollos. Take aim.
Take aim.
Take aim forever, boys.
Take aim forever, boys. Absolutely. All right.
But I don't know. Again, I agree with you guys. I don't think it's ever going to go away for good. But I think it's going to be much more long term before they try it again. because of the way that the last two high-profile attempts went. Burgundy's second question for everyone: will minor league teams be sustainable without crowds? I assume he means like once everything opens back up.
No. Oh, no, not without crowds. No,
they don't have like MLB. Major league teams can all do it because they have TV money and merchandise money to support that and collective bargaining and the whole 9 yards. Minor league teams depend almost exclusively on their gates.
Yeah, gates a big part of their revenue stream. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
I would say no.
It'd be similar to like a movie theater not being allowed to sell concessions. You know, you're basically taking away their entire revenue stream. So absolutely not. No.
I think this is going to be interesting. Like, I mean, the whole Corona thing has affected a lot of businesses. A lot of businesses that have been around for years are dying because of this. But within our purview of sports fans, I honestly think we see like a major shrinkage and reshuffling of minor leagues across pro sports as a result of this. Because
we even saw just this week, you know, you had a bunch of teams say that they weren't going to be paying the minor league players. Like the Dodgers and I think the Royals were like chief among them, and teams in terms of teams that just said, no, we're basically going to shut you down for the year, and even if we do come back, you're not going to be part of whatever expanded roster we would play with. Because I think that's the only hope for any minor league baseball player at this point is to come back on some sort of expanded roster that the MLB teams would have to have. But yeah,
I was just taking it a step further. I think that until they can figure out a way to bring crowds back for baseball, because baseball is not as reliant on crowd money, but it's still a pretty good part of their, you know, the gate receipts are still part of, you know, that's part of what they pay the other team with and all that. I think that we talked about this last week. I think that sports, until they can figure out a way to come back either you come back completely or you don't.
All right. So next, from the Grim Reaper, who Greg refused to answer questions from.
No, I'll answer the questions. I'm just not going to do the Grim Reaper thing. You know, at my age, you got to be superstitious about this stuff.
Of course. For everybody, which of your favorite teams are you most desperate for a title? Caveat for Mike and Greg, who is second after the Leafs and Browns, of course. So, Mike, after the Leafs.
Oh, Jays.
Jays, yeah,
the Blue Jays. Like I've said, hockey's by far my favorite sport, but I've said it plenty of times that the Blue Jays probably just eke out the Leafs in terms of being my all-time favorite, you know, sports team. So yeah, after the Leafs, definitely the Jays. Would love to see a World Series come back to Toronto.
After the Browns, obviously the Indians, but one I'd really like to see win is the Packers, because then I get a shareholder Super Bowl ring, so I kind of like to see that too. But after the Browns, it's definitely the Indians without question.
Do you tag Andy in the Facebook picture of the Super Bowl ring?
Nah,
rub salt in that wound.
No. But yeah, I would love to see the Indians pull it off. It was so much fun when they played the Cubs in 2016, I think.
Sorry about that.
Well, hey, you know what? The better team won. I mean, how the Indians got up 3-1 in that series is beyond me, but they did it, and they couldn't close it. You know, the best team won. I'm not going to – it wasn't one of those where you go, oh, the Cleveland team screwed up. No, they just got beat by a better team, and I can live with that. But that was a great series, by the way. That Game 7, oh, my God.
Yeah, it's historic.
But anyway, the Indians would be my next choice. They might even probably be my first choice, actually. I mean, I'd love to see the Browns do it, but I think an Indians one would be a little more important to me. I'm kind of like with Mike is with the Blue Jays. You know, the Browns are like certainly one of my favorite teams, but if I had to pick one that I'm like the most emotionally connected to, is probably the Indians. So I'd have to go with the Indians on that one. What about you guys?
I mean,
Andy?
I have to say the Bears, of course. The Bears have just been just dragging me through the mud for the last however many years, 20 plus years now, and. I mean, yeah, the Bears. I can't really, I mean, I've had Blackhawks in the Cubs, so I mean, I'm not like starving for championship teams. This as horrible as that is to say, but the Bears are my baby, though. They've been my team. Like, I mean, they're just my number one, and they've gotten close once or twice, but they have never been.
Sorry about that, Andy.
No, it's okay. You know, I mean, it's again, it's not. It is what it is. It's not like, again, like Greg said.
We couldn't let Rex Grossman win a Super Bowl.
Right. It wasn't like Trent Dilfer beat the Bears or something, you know. I mean, Peyton Manning is one of the best ever, and he beat the Bears on a rainy day in Miami, and the Bears look like shit, and that's that. So, I mean, I don't know. But the Bears. Long answer short, the Bears, yeah.
But what a beautiful uniform matchup that was. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it was nice.
Super Bowl, but yeah. All right.
Zach?
For me, I'd have to go. I mean, it's weird because like the Angels and Ducks have both won in this millennium.
Yeah.
And the Lakers, like I want them to get back on top, as it were, but that's more of an inevitability than like a God. I'm just waiting for it to happen. It's like no, it'll happen sooner than later. I would want the Rams to win, but I'm also willing to wait 5 years when they're looking nicer.
Good call.
Interesting side on that. Apparently, some Rams beat writer was on a podcast, and he was like, the feeling within the organization is that the team is actually being receptive to like feedback, and the gradient numbers might not even last like 3 years.
Well, that's still too long. But I get it's kind of a tie between the Angels and Ducks for two different reasons. For both, they have kind of years of playoff failure at their back. The Ducks a little bit more spectacularly than the Angels did, and now like the Angels have quite possibly the best baseball player of all time. And if they like just waste that wealth that they've been fortunate to have, like. I don't know how I would ever feel about the Angels again after that. To have essentially like Babe Ruth on your team and not win a title, not even come close to competing in a playoff series is
like, come on, I got to give it to Mike Trout, man. Like the loyalty he's shown that team is admirable. But like, come on, and I like the Angels. Like I will forever like the Anaheim, Los Angeles, whatever Angels for saving us from a Barry Bonds World Series championship.
Yeah.
So like Angels, you're good in my book, but you guys got to help Mike Trout out, man. Like, come on.
He can't be the next Ernie Banks. He can't. No. Or the latest Ernie Banks.
But I can't just give it flat out to the Angels because the other thing that just will forever be a knife in my side is the fact that the Ducks won the Cup first. And then the Kings won 2 by beating the Ducks on the way to the first one. So I need the Ducks to get a second one to even up the Kings. And if they can beat the Kings on the way to it, that would just, make things all nice and square.
Was that also the year that the Kings came back from 3-0 down to beat
That was the second one.
That was their second one. Right.
Yeah. Both bad. Still from the Grim Reaper. If there was ever a Bass meetup of us 3 or 4, what city would we prefer? Vegas, LA, Chicago, Florida?
I actually have an answer for this. So
I think based on all the conversations we ever had, if it were ever to happen, it'd most likely be in Florida because that's where Mike's living and that's where Greg goes. And I mean, it's just a plane I can get there. If this were to ever happen in our lifetimes, but
I mean, most flights would go somewhere like we could probably do Atlanta. I mean, that's like the airport hub. I don't know. I mean, this is one of those questions where it's like, do you want to drink water with ice cubes or without it right now? It's like, oh, I don't fucking know. Who cares? Like, we'll figure it out if we meet up. I just find this is an odd question. Like the logistics of picking a city just.
I think it's just like, okay, let's take if we could just pick one, what would your pick be?
Oh, I mean, my answer for this is really easy. It's Omaha. We're going to go see the Omaha beef, and we're going to meet sirloin.
Right.
And I wouldn't object to that. I'd rather meet somewhere really unique and strange than like just we're in this city.
You weren't here when we did the deep dive on the Omaha Beef Arena team.
There's some like third-tier arena football team named the Omaha Beef, and their mascot is named Sirloin.
I've heard of sirloin from the tournament, GOV.
Yeah.
So
he's a classic.
And so we have offered to the Omaha Beef that, like, we will be the official podcast of the Omaha Beef, and we will do a podcast from an Omaha Beef game, but we want free swag and we want to meet sirloin.
Right.
They didn't take up our offer, unfortunately.
Well, since Omaha doesn't want to play ball with us, my pick would be Vegas because I've never been there.
Vegas is a solid choice.
Plus, I would love to see what kind of trouble the four of us could get into if we were all together. That would be fun. Yeah.
I would want to go just to see Zach bet on the CFL again.
Right. Yeah, that.
I bet on the CFL and the XFL. What kind of degenerate am I?
Right. I want to see which one of us has to get bailed out of jail.
Got any lines on the XFL? Come on.
I want to see like which one of us gets drunk and acts like crazy, and so Vegas would be my choice.
Works for me.
Best Still Green Reaper, best modern 1990s onward classic uniform. That's an interesting question. His examples are the Chicago White Sox, Houston Texans, LA Angels. I love what the Angels are wearing, but
I think it's easy for me
because there's so many teams that have gone throwback recently that, like, what do you do?
This is really easy for me. I'm going to reference my earlier, favorite sports team of all time, the current Blue Jays look.
Yeah, but again, that's a throwback.
Yeah. And they redesigned it.
If you're talking like original design from that time on, I got to go with the White Sox. I mean, they created a modern classic, I think, with that set. With the black alternate, the gray roads look really good. They don't wear them often enough. And the white home with the pinstripe looks great, too. So I'm going to go with the White Sox as my choice on that.
I can't.
It's just straight up beautiful uniform.
I can't do that. With the White Sox, to me, are like one of the most bland-looking teams I've always just felt like it's the way they had the Sox written in that weird script on their hat. It just looks stupid. Their uniforms look still like the White Sox logo. The Sox themselves, pretty cool. They've got some like really interesting things they could do, but it's just so bland. And I don't know. There's something about a team that is black, white, and gray that just never resonated with me. But I understand the appeal of it, sure. But this is a very difficult question. If anyone else has an answer off the top of their head, go ahead. I'm still kind of pondering here.
I would say also. I would just say, kind of going off that, the Houston Texans, I think, have a good look. I think it's just a solid football look. It's a bit modern, but it's still really classic.
I'm trying to think. How about like the Minnesota Wild?
They've changed too much.
Yeah, they keep tweaking it.
Yeah, the jersey designs haven't been consistent. If they had been wearing the same thing the whole time, then I'd give it to them, because the logo, I mean, despite how stupid the name Wild is, they made an all-time logo out of that concept. So I don't think there's anything to argue about there.
The Texans, I think, are a little too simple for my taste. I like the helmet a lot. It's a good traditional look, but it could use just a little better striping, I think. Might make it a little more fun.
You know what I'm going to say? It's a look that hasn't actually gotten on the field yet. The new Padres look is...
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
I love that so much.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm not even a Padres fan, and I want to get, like, a sand brown jersey.
Yeah.
I go out with the Padres, too. That's a good choice, yeah.
The team that immediately comes to mind is the original San Jose Sharks. I thought those uniforms were just fucking glorious and gone too soon, in my opinion.
And then they brought them back as a throwback.
They look so in HD. Those uniforms look absolutely fucking stupendous. I guess for modern classic, I would say the Vince Carter era Toronto Raptors uniforms were outstanding. I love those uniforms.
You know what? A lot of people really didn't like the half black, half purple jerseys, but they worked.
I really like them. I mean, I'm just trying to think of ones that stood out to me. The new Florida Panthers look is really good.
I like that one too.
The original Diamondbacks look was pretty damn good, and teams like that are going back to look like the Buccaneers are going back to their old uniforms. The Diamondbacks are slowly working their way back towards their original uniforms. The Coyotes are bringing the Kachinas back. I mean, people are starting to really appreciate, like, it's not so much like a rebrand. Yes, it's a rebranding a little bit in name, but as we discussed with like the Leafs, for example, you're just taking something that was already good and just cleaning it up, giving it a little bit of polish, and trying to really make the most of that uniform. But yeah, it's a very subjective thing.
And the last question here from Grim Reaper. Last question from the Grim Reaper. Would you ever consider Bass Patreon for bonus content? We've talked about this years ago, but I mean, if it wasn't pretty obvious by the way that we conduct this show, we're all pretty casual with it. You know, we don't like putting kind of extra responsibilities, or
right.
We're not looking for money.
Like God, that's like another day that we gotta schedule shit to put together the bonus content. Like, and besides, I'm still holding out that we're just gonna get paid in Totino's pizza rolls, and like that's gonna
like
if everybody had the time and the inclination, sure. The problem is no one has the time or the inclination.
Yeah,
and I think that's the issue. Like, I don't know what we would do for bonus content. I mean,
no.
I think the closest we could have ever gotten is if we made like the football show,
right?
Content,
and like geek show, like
But then at that point, you're going to get people who are going to be like, "Well, why isn't it on the main sports show? You're gatekeeping." Like to me, like the podcasts I listen to that do kind of have a Patreon, like. The ones that seem to make it work best are the ones who say, like, this is the main show. Like, everything that you've gotten from the main show, you will continue to get. It's just that there's going to be extra on the side if you support the Patreon, but you're not going to lose anything from the main show. And I think that's difficult for us because, again, like, if we did, like, a football show, right, that was separate, then – that would necessitate that we talk about football less, and then people would then, feel gypped. It's like, oh, now I got to pay for something that I used to get, for free. And it's like we'd have to figure out like bonus content that is stuff that we wouldn't do anyway. And that is probably a problem. And then even if we did figure that out, then it's a matter of, now we've actually got to schedule it and record it and, edit it. And it's
I think when we talked about cereal boxes last week, I think we've shown that there really isn't much out there that won't make the main show.
Yeah.
Any bonus content is going to be really disappointing compared to what's on the main show, is what I would think.
Part of like, to peel back the curtain a little bit, like for years ago, like when I walked away from the show initially, like a lot of it had to do with just I needed more personal time, and we would do the show for like 3-4 hours once a week. So that's one of my evenings after work shot. Then you got to spend, and I'm sure Greg, you probably put a similar amount of time into it now. Like I'd have to put a lot of time into editing and to like master the file, adding audio stuff, and then you got to upload it to like 4 different places. And after a while, like, it becomes like something you do like 2-3 nights a week. And that's before you even do the show. And the whole point of the show of doing it in the first place was that we enjoy it, and we enjoy hanging out with each other over Skype or whatnot. And that's like I suddenly had a realization that, like, this is basically a second job. And when we record the show, I'm essentially just at work again, and it's not nearly as much fun as it should be. And since I've been back the last month or however long it's been, however you want to put it, like. I just remembered how much fun it is to do this. And I mean, obviously it's been a few years since I've been an active part of the show, but like the main thing for anybody who does a podcast or whatever, if they want to do the Patreon route and gain a career way out of it, we've had opportunities like that somewhat in the past. We've kind of done the whole podcast network thing briefly, and it was just not our thing. It's not our speed. It's not really it doesn't really define us. And the show is so much better when it's just the 3 or 4 of us just talking about whatever we want to talk about, just being chums and enjoying one another's company and not having to worry about, how many listens did we get? How did we do our ad reads this week? Did we,
Right.
XYZ? My brother is doing this, and I'll try not to bloviate too long, but he's trying to get a sports podcast going where they're putting out 3-4 episodes a week, and they're trying to get Patreon going. They're really dedicating themselves to it. And I mean, I'm really proud of him. I hope that he and his co-hosts and they have interns even. I hope they really take it off and make it big, because they're clearly passionate about it. But it's just not to speak for everybody, but it's definitely not for me. I don't know if it's something I want to say is for us, but I feel like we've all got lives, we've all got personal time, and we just, part of what makes this show good is when we just hang out and not have to let the bullshit slide,
Yeah. That's us. That's us in a nutshell. Yeah.
I have had aspirations to make my own thing and try to go that route myself with something, because it's kind of what I'm doing as a career with sports writing. It's just something that I want to get into, truly professionally. But in terms of what we do here, I don't have the extra time to do that right now, because I have a lot of work that I do. And then, as much as there was a time where I really could have, I had ideas to be like, hey guys, I really want to take the spearhead and really drive this thing forward. But we like how we do it, and we've never had any aspirations to really make it more than it is. And like Andy said, the couple times that we strayed out of it, it's you know what, this.
Yeah.
There's something authentic.
We had a set time slot when we were doing the More Like Radio thing. That kind of sucked, because we were stuck with it. It was if we couldn't have recorded tonight, then we go, okay, when can we record? We'll go Wednesday. Okay, no big deal. We couldn't do that, and like Andy said, it became a job. And I would just say too that
for zero pay or recognition or
we did have 11 million listeners, so there was that. No.
They tried to say. We did one.
Yeah.
And
it was either 11 million or 45, whatever.
Yeah.
But
we don't mind talking to just the I think at the most we might have is 200 people that listen to us. That's fine.
Yeah, it's fine by us. But
we grew out of a message board. We talk to the people of the message board. Yes, we do have people that listen outside of it, and that's great. But if they like how we are, despite our focus on some things that they might not know about, that's fine with me.
I think that if we started approaching it as anything other than what it's been for the last 7 years, which is just 3-4 guys get on here and just talk, it changes the whole atmosphere of the show, and I don't want to do that. Another thing too with Patreon, that's paid, right? So
people donate money and
right.
money to you. Yeah.
And here's the thing with that, I this is going to sound way more pompous than I mean it to, but we've got a brand that we've built with this kind of, with the people that listen. It's a brand, for whatever that's worth. I wouldn't want to put anything on the bonus content that didn't live up to the brand of the show, and I'm afraid that's what would happen, because we will be talking before the show. And we'll stop each other and go, no, save that for the show, because we don't want to leave the good stuff in the bullpen. Yeah. We don't want to leave the good, so I would be worried that what they would be getting wouldn't be as good as what they get on the main show. And if we can't do that, it's not, now if they want to give us money, fine, that's fine. Go ahead, knock yourselves out. But
and the other thing that I don't think we've talked about openly, but again, because of the low listenership that we have, if we say we did start a Patreon, and of the 200 people that listen to us, let's be generous and say that half of them would actually give us the $5 a month or whatever. So that's $500 a month between 3 of us normally, and now Andy 4. Dividing that up is do we really want an extra $100 thrown our way every month? This would be nice.
And keep in mind, Patreon gets a cut of that.
Right.
So I like the fact that
reward is not worth it. Ultimately,
I like the fact that Grim Reaper thinks that the show is good enough to do that with. That's I'm honored by that. But as I said, everything, as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure you guys feel the same way. The best stuff goes on this show. Everything else is secondary. As far as I just couldn't be charging you for secondhand content. That wouldn't feel right to me. I wouldn't like that. Now, if we could do merchandise, that might be something we could look at down the road. But, just to do bonus, I don't know what, Greg's going to do a 5-minute rant on, I don't know, the new Browns
Jackson.
uniforms. Or Hugh Jackson, yeah. Who would want to hear that in the first place?
I don't know. That could be pretty funny.
Oh yeah, but again, though, if it's good, I want it to be on this show. I don't want to be doing it by myself.
But there are certain things that like we just never bring up on the show. That like there's plenty of TV shows that we watch that we just don't talk about. And like,
but again, are we going to throw all that away at a time when there are no sports? No, everything's on the table now. So.
Yeah, it's different now.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, that's odd. Like, but thank you for the vote of confidence. But so I'll take it back up with Burgundy again. He's asking, what is your favorite obsolete technology?
Oh,
BlackBerry.
Wow. That might be mine too. Yeah, BlackBerry.
I loved the keyboard and the trackball. I avoided getting the touchscreen iPhone for years. I was kind of forced to, but I couldn't go back now.
My BlackBerry was like a Honda Accord. It just ran and ran and ran, no problems, and I loved texting on it.
Just me, a BBM, and brick ball. That was all I needed.
Yeah, it was. It actually operated great as a phone too. BlackBerry would be my choice too. Absolutely.
Do you have? No, go ahead, Mike. If you have one, that's it.
I mean, I was just gonna say because like I collect vintage video games, so like console like cartridge based video game systems from the 90s. Like I'm a big Sega Genesis fan, so there's that. I like VCRs. I like cassette, Walkmans. So like anything analog like that, I'm into. And that's basically my contribution.
I'll throw one more in. Tecmo Bowl, Super Bowl. I like that too. And it's not really. I guess it's obsolete, but yeah.
I'd have to go with buckling spring keyboards. Of course, any sort of old keyboard that's like when you're typing on it, it sounds like the gears of a tank are turning. Like I really enjoy that old clunky 80s computing stuff like that. I love all that stuff. I'm not a collector necessarily, but it does fascinate me. I literally have just sat there and watched YouTube videos of people typing on like a 1984 IBM Model F, and just like, ooh, that sounds nice, and that's it. So there's my entry.
All right, okay. Up next, Mike.
All right, moving on. What is the best food you've ever eaten while at a game?
Oh, like are we talking stadium food, or can we throw in? Like tailgate food. I'm gonna have to. We have probably to limit the stadium food because
probably gonna limit the stadium food because tailgate food. That's
not fair. Yeah. No,
that's interesting.
My answers would be, and this is very contextual. So the first answer would be I was kind of drunk at a U of I basketball game, and I ate 2 hot dogs for $4, and they were delicious, mostly because I was kind of drunk and really hungry, but it was just the right food at the right time. But the other one is I was at a Cubs home game, day game. I think they were playing the Rockies or something. And me and my dad me and my dad split a huge bag of peanuts we got at the stadium. So with my dad eating a bag of peanuts at the ball game, day game baseball, I was like, that's easily my winner. Yes, peanuts, not penis.
Right. Yeah, we got it. Mine is really simple. I think it was it's at Huntington Park in Columbus. They have one of the best cheeseburgers you'll ever eat in your life at the concession stand there. They have a little restaurant out in left field. It's not like a club restaurant. Anybody can go in it, but you can sit down up there and eat. And that'd be my first. My second was crab cake at Camden Yards in Baltimore. It was really good too. So those are my two.
I would say, the Rogers Center in Toronto has a delicious grilled chicken sandwich, and it's not really it's not really a concession stand. It's not like a brand name I can tell you. It's just the grilled chicken sandwich at the Rogers Center. It's fantastic. So,
okay,
man, I can't think of. Usually, when I go to a game, I'm not getting anything crazy, just like a dog. But the only things that are sticking out to me as I think about them are.
How about the grub tub, Zach?
Yeah, the grub tub.
You thought that? Yeah,
that is a great technology that's been foisted onto the world. But it's also weird to have a warm straw. I don't know. It's strange. I would go with
rub tub is ever so slightly unnerving. It feels like that should be the case.
it's weird, but useful. And anyway, the things I would say are at Angel Stadium, you have to go in the third base entrance. There's a big grilling station where they sell the big foot-long hot dogs, but they're not like thin foot-longs. They're good, thick foot-long hot dogs on the grill. You can get all the sort of things on them, like brisket and whatever, or you just get the hot dog. Because like there's guys that walk around the stadium to sell them, but those are the boiled ones. They taste like garbage. Right. You got to get the good grilled one. And then along the same lines, at the Cubs spring training place out in Mesa, they have a hot dog stand that's pretty good. Gives you the extra stuff that you would want. And then the Angel Spring Training place gets a lot of like food trucks that come in, so you get a bunch of different stuff, which I think is a great option as well.
All right. And finally,
have you ever considered covering esports if you were desperate enough for content?
No.
No.
I think that there's a passive interest in esports is one thing, but like to cover it would just be like hard pass.
We don't know enough about it. I think.
Here's the thing. I tried to watch a Overwatch tournament. Overwatch did this Overwatch League thing like a few years back, and I tried to watch that garbage, and like 5 seconds into the broadcast, I was completely lost going, what the hell's going on? What am I doing? So, no. No.
We will never be that desperate for content.
We will talk about cereal box mascots.
Yeah. And not only will we talk about them, we'll do it well. So we're not worried about running out of content. That'll never happen with us. There will always be some rabbit hole we can go down, believe me. How do you think we found the Omaha beef? Anybody else want to weigh in on the esports, or are we all in pretty much agreement that that's not going to be an option?
I'm good.
Yeah, I like it. I like watching Let's Plays on YouTube. I like watching people play video games. It's that, like, I don't have a problem with that. But whenever I've tried to like watch any of the competitive stuff with like the shoutcasters, as they call them, like I can't follow what's happening. Like it's impossible for me to follow what's going on in an Overwatch match. Like I just can't sit there and enjoy it. Even in games that I've played, like I've watched competitive Halo. I love playing competitive Halo. I cannot watch somebody else play it. It just, especially when they're cutting between cameras and feeds and they're yelling. Like it's not worth.
If you want to watch competitive Halo, just watch Red versus Blue. You'll have a better time.
Exactly.
Now with those marble races, I can see us getting into that.
Oh, that is a sport of men.
Yes,
I've been watching Marble League Racing for a couple of years now, about a bit over a year. And I mean, I have my teams. I'm a Jawbreakers man.
We got to start watching, guys, so that we can catch up with Andy and we can actually discuss marble racing.
Well,
because I promise you, no other show is doing it.
I mean, but again, like Marble Racing, there's no like I'm a big fan of the Jawbreakers team, but it's not like the Jawbreakers are any better than like the Chocolatiers or the Limers or whatever. Like they're just marbles.
Okay, no. If you are a Limers fan, you're a piece of shit. All right.
Hey. That's come on. That if you are like a like I'm trying to think of the damn team names now. Like what's the not the Rojo Racers, the I can't remember the team name, but anyway, there's certain teams that you're just like that are the like Cowboys and or there's other ones that are
you like being a Limers fan, that's like the guy who knows nothing about English football but decides he's going to be a Man U fan. Like fuck you.
Well, just to bring this home, guys, the new season of Marble Racing starts in a couple weeks, so we will be on top of it. I promise you.
Just don't root for the Savage Speeders. That's the team you got to avoid. Savage Speeders. I do not like the Savage Speeders at all.
All right, so
I'm going to vote for whoever has the best uniforms.
Right, me too. The best looking marble team. That's the one I'm going with.
Best library.
Yeah, right. From the Bass Facebook page, this is from our listener Kyle, who is not part of the boards. He's one of our off-board listeners. So, question one for Zach: since both the Ducks and Angels won championships after changing their logos and uniforms, What do you think would have looked weirder, the Ducks winning the Cup with the Mighty Ducks identity, or the Angels winning the World Series and the periwinkle look?
This isn't even a question. If the Angels had won in those monstrosities, and that, because the problem is usually when you win a title, that's what you end up sticking with, at least for a bit, because those are your glory years. With the Angels and Ducks, that's kind of held true. I would much rather the Ducks have won the Mighty Ducks and celebrated that going forward than the Angels be, because the other thing with those Angels uniforms, aside, everything. There was not a good memory associated with those uniforms whatsoever. They were garbage for so many years with those things. So, maybe that changes when they win, but it's not going to make me feel any better about how they look, because it was just, they look like those cartoon train conductors,
the light blue with the dark blue pinstripes.
I've said on the show so many times that it's there's really not any bad uniforms in baseball, but if that was still around, there would be a bad uniform in baseball.
I dare say an iconic look with what do you know about the Angels? There's an A with a halo around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any iteration of the halo of the Angels, you have the A with the halo, except when Disney's like, yeah, but you know what else Angels have?
Wings.
Yeah,
so they didn't just put like a wing on a haloed A. They just got rid of the halo and put a wing on it and thought, yeah, that's fine.
I dare say that those uniforms are like underrated bad uniforms. Like, you see people listing some of the worst uniforms of all time. Those uniforms rarely get mentioned, but they were truly
were horrific.
Those are along the same lines as the Rockets pajama uniforms.
Yeah, these uniforms are as 90s gaudy as you could probably have gotten in baseball. Just bad.
Yeah. Mike, this one's for you.
Oh, okay.
In the time since you moved to the U.S., have you managed to get any friends or coworkers into watching the CFL?
It's actually funny because some of my coworkers are really into football, and that's actually kind of how I slowly became a Bucs fan. Because make friends with coworkers, and they're like, "Hey, we're all getting together to watch the Bucs game, this weekend." And I've been watching them for a couple years now. You just start to grow attached, and I've sort of been talking up the CFL. I don't know if any of them have really gotten into it, but there are people who I work with / are friends with who know a bit more than I would have expected to know about the CFL. So maybe I'm slowly making headway. I don't know, but there's definitely an interest there. Thank God Americans are just obsessed with football, and they're literally be interested in any version of it, because there you go.
All right, this one's for me. What about watching sports is better or worse today than it was in the 70s and 80s? Wow. From a technical standpoint, nothing about it. Everything about it today is better. The picture quality is much better. Graphics are better. The score bugs are, we didn't have that back then. The one thing I will say that I think was better back then were the announcers, because you had guys like Vince Scully calling football for CBS. You had just, Brent Musburger was doing NFL stuff. And you had the Monday Night Football trio of Don Meredith, Howard Cosell, and Frank Gifford. So that part of it, the announcing was in some aspects better. And the one thing I noticed it's a huge difference are the crowds. The crowds were just, because people could afford to go to games back then, the crowds were much more representative of the people that watch the games at home, more so than they are now. They were louder, more boisterous, and the stadiums were built differently. But other than that, not a whole lot's better from back then than it is now. Obviously, sleeves on jerseys in football, always. But other than that, technologically, it's far superior now than to what it was then. It's just a whole completely different animal.
Kind of going off that, though, I want to ask you, do you ever feel, Greg, that maybe with the technological advances, sort of like the graphical advances, that maybe it's gotten too far? Like the thing that comes to mind would be this last Super Bowl, the 49ers Chiefs Super Bowl, where they had like cartoon comic book.
Oh yeah,
pictures. And do you ever think like, yeah, I'm glad that the graphics and score bug tech has gotten better, but this is just ridiculous?
Yeah, because I worked in TV production, so my thing was always like, make it look classy. Don't make it, don't do something just because you can do it. I mean, we've made this joke a million times, but just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. And a lot of times that's what happens. But I think we talked about this with the design people last week when we were talking, or with the Rams show, how they're all trying to impress each other. When you see shit like that, that's Fox trying to show CBS, ABC, ESPN, look what we can do. That's all that is. They know that's not good graphics. They know that because people can only absorb so much of what's on the screen, and only so much of it's going to stick. So when you've got too much information going on, I just say make it clean, make it look good, and keep the information limited to what people can actually comprehend, and you're fine. But these stuff like that, that's just showing off for the other networks. That's a Rams uniform manifesting as a graphic on TV. It's like, look at what this guy can do. That's all it is. It's bullshit. So yeah, in that aspect, it goes too far a lot. But that's the Super Bowl. It's your big showcase. That's when you do that stuff. So you show off to the other networks. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, it does go too far. All right. Finally, for everybody, has there ever been a jersey you had a chance to get but didn't? Doesn't matter the sport, and you regret not getting it? Huh.
I can't think of one.
My answer is no. I mean, there were jerseys that I had missed over time, but I've got pretty much every Ducks jersey that they've worn. Like the only things that I'm missing are I want to get some proper names and numbers on some of them, but no, I think no. You know what? I do have one now that I think about it. Two. I've always wanted to get, especially after the name change, I wanted to get like a World Series version of the road uniforms for the Angels, where they say Anaheim on the front of them, the city they play in. And then the other one that may just be a lost cause at this point, but due to the shift over to the cool base shit in baseball, I don't know if I can ever get a Mike Trout jersey that I can be happy having, because it's always going to be this crappy material that
turns into like mesh halfway down the back for no reason.
The flat numbers and the thin material and the mesh, and like you're not going to have the same sort of thicker fabric.
We've gone over this before, but what the hell happened to the quality of replica jerseys over the years? Because Fanatics. Yeah.
Fanatics.
So the only thing I can't think of a jersey, but I feel like I've been looking a lot for the old San Jose Sharks logo on like hats, T-shirts, sweatshirts, stuff like that, and it's very difficult to find. Very difficult. Even when they brought the throwbacks back, I don't think there was a ton of merchandise floating around for that specific look. And I've been scouring eBay and places like that, and there's a very limited, very crappy selection. So that's my. But uniform wise, no, there's not one I could think of.
The only one I can think of, and I might still be able to get it. I haven't looked lately, but for a while, the NBA was selling hardwood classics, and they had a Michael Cooper Lakers jersey, which I thought would have been really cool to get, and I never did. But if it's still out there, I can still get it. But if it's not, then that would be one that I wish I had gotten that I didn't. Just because it's Michael Cooper, it's not Magic, it's not Kareem, it's not James Worthy, it was Michael Cooper, and I thought that was cool from the '80s Lakers. So that's mine.
See, this is weird, because the only thing that comes to mind for me is one, like, I didn't pick it up, but as far as I know, they're still selling it. So, like, if I really wanted to, I could just wait for the malls to reopen and then head over and probably pick it up from, Lid's locker room or whatever. And that is a Steve Nash, like, 90s Suns throwback. Because, one, that 90s Suns uniform is one of my favorite basketball uniforms of all time. I really love it. And Steve Nash, as a short white Canadian who was a two-time NBA MVP, is an inspiration to me. So, so I feel like I'd really want one. The one time where I was in there and I saw it and I just was like, I don't feel like spending the money on it. If I go back and I never see it again, then that'll definitely be on the list. But I feel like they're probably going to be selling those for a while. So I don't really feel like I've missed it.
The difference with those, and like I feel that way about a lot of these kind of throwbacks, is that what you buy is going to be like a reproduction of like by today's standards.
Yeah,
it's not gonna be the same as it was then.
Yeah,
which is kind of.
Which goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, where it's like the quality has not been what it used to be. So I almost, if I absolutely really wanted to, I might as well just see if I could find like an original Steve Nash 90s Suns jersey on eBay and pick it up, because it'll probably be better quality.
Yeah. It's like I want to, kind of maximize my hockey jersey collection at some point and get all the ones I really want. And like, I would love to get a Montreal Canadiens jersey. I'm not going to buy an Adidas version. I just won't do it.
So
I'm going to go back and find one from the 90s or 80s or something. A CCM at least.
So I actually do own one Montreal Canadiens jersey, and it's blasphemous as a Maple Leafs fan, but I did pick one up, and I had the same idea that you had, Zach, where I was like, I'm not going to, like, this is like the pinstripes of hockey. Like, I can't just get some Adidas or Reebok thing. Like, and CCM made some, like, I think they were 60s Montreal Canadiens throwbacks, and so it's the brighter red. It's kind of like a more classic style jersey construction, and it's got the white lace-up collars. Just heads up, it's like it's like a CCM vintage thing. So just search for that, and maybe you'll find something.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to make a suggestion here, guys. We've been running kind of long on this. I'd like to carry Andy's questions over to the next show to get us started on the next show. Is that okay with everybody?
Sure, fine, works for me.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll wrap it up there. Thanks, everybody, for all the questions. We hope we gave you at least halfway satisfactory answers. Sorry about the Patreon. Sorry about the esports, but we're not going to lie to you. So with that, we're going to
Patreon. We cover esports, but
if we could do Patreon for merchandise, because I've got people can make merchandise, we'll do that. That I'll do.
If we do, we should do Patreon, and the Patreon reward is we cover esports. But like the thing is, like, we never promised you we do it well.
Oh yeah, listening to us cover esports might actually be worthwhile.
If somebody out there wants to send me $5 a month,
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just get a GoFundMe thing going or something. But yeah, talk
to me and I'll give you the proper email address.
No, that was actually one of the funniest things I've ever seen. There's a YouTuber who does like Let's Plays who started a Patreon when Patreon first started to get big, and I kind of just fell out of him for a while. I stopped watching him, and then just maybe half a year ago, I decided to pop back on his channel and see what he was up to. And he had replaced the Patreon link with a link to his PayPal. And so he's just gone straight from if you pay me money, like, oh, you'll get extra content too. Yeah, just send me money directly to me, like.
Yeah.
Go. I could say I got to run, guys. So if you want to wrap,
okay.
Close the show.
Yeah. All right. We will call it a night as well. As always, follow us on Twitter at Basically Sports. Subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, and YouTube. And stay safe out there. And we'll see you next week, I guess.
See ya.
Later, guys.
Be nice.
This has been a Filmways presentation, darling.